Which part of Scotland? The M6 from Scotland to the Lake District is. Yeah, I know. Something else.
I tell you, it's crazy. Good morning, everybody. I don't know where. Camera on the corner, very new and scroll lane. It's changed out the red light.
Yes.
Where? The corner of very new and scrolls lane. It's changed from just red lights to auto speed. Is there a warning? Because a few people have been flashed there.
Only if you're going for a red light or if just speeding.
You're just speeding. You're going through a green light.
See, coming to this.
If you speed through a red light, you get a double fine, I guess.
It's not working.
They received the fines for it though.
It's not
Speeding.
Speeding.
It's taking a long time to
You're
go.
not on that network. No, you're on that Grey Tech. You need to be on the X.
It's still on Trade. It's
not.
meant to be on Trade Tech.
To be on, he switched off. Levy.
I'm on 5G now.
No, it should be on.
5G just got your job. Yeah, join 5G club.
Oh, Ben, can you hear me? Ben? Yeah, you can hear me. Right, it's fine. It's working. Wait, it's working. Wait, briefly. Oh, sorry, Yossi, how are you? Are you okay? Tired. I just said very short word. Just give me a lot of chizuk. We all know the Rambam writes on this week's parsha that Miriam got savas. The Rambam makes like a 4-5 way kalvachima. Miriam didn't hate Moshe, on the contrary, she loved him. She risked her life to save him. Miriam didn't say anything negative. All she said about Moshe Rabbeinu was that he's equal to all other Nevi'im, and the Bible said that about Miriam. All she did was say it to Aaron, and Aaron was somebody that was Oyev Shalom, Void of Shalom, and Aaron would never cause him any harm. And Moshe Rabbeinu didn't get upset because the Apostle straight away says, "Well, Ish Moshe Onov." And after the king, she got punished for those who say negative things to people who hate and people they don't like, and to the public. Because it was, for him, it was a negative. For Moshe to say that he's equal to all other Nevi'im is a negative because it was much greater than all Nevi'im. So I saw the Sefer Eitz Hadas, it's from the Tells of Rosh Hashiva, a very interesting idea. I don't know, some people like it or not. He asks the question, it's all very nice, but the Apostle there says, that Miriam was speaking about Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu was not like, if you speak about your neighbor. So then you say to yourself, why should I learn from Miriam? Miriam spoke about Moshe Rabbeinu. My neighbor, who's my neighbor compared to Moshe Rabbeinu? So from here we see that just like Miriam did not fully appreciate Moshe Rabbeinu, and she didn't really appreciate his true greatness, we can never appreciate the true greatness of another Yid. And that fear, how can you speak negatively about somebody that you've got no musig of their greatness, applies to every single Yid. And therefore, that halacha, how can you not be scared to speak about something? That applies to every person you're speaking about. You have to imagine us speaking about Chaim Knesset, you wouldn't dare be able to open because you say, such a person got no idea of the greatness. The same thing about every that tells Rosh Hashiva. I just think you see everybody coming here after a long drive from Scotland, holding down 2-3 jobs, and all the different tildas, and they come to hear Shiur on Yoma, which is not the easiest at the moment, not the easiest chilek. So, how can you have not fear to speak about such people? And that is, it's a very nice word. We've got no musik, the greatness of a Yid. Therefore, we should be fearful before we speak about something. We have to Mem Gimel on Beis bottom line. We're going to discuss most of today, not the whole thing. One halacha. The halacha is you are not allowed to go into the Beis HaMikdash. You okay? When you've got the avodah going on inside the Beis HaMikdash. Primarily, two different avodas. The keteros, and the keteros is split into two. Which keteros is split into two? The keteros which happened every day, and the keteros which happens on Yom Kippur. Keteros which happens every day was in where? The heichal. Ma'ashenk in the keteros in Yom Kippur, Moshe. Where was the keteros in Yom Kippur? Do you know? Kodesh Kadoshim. So we've got two kinds of keteros. Keteros which happens every day. Keteros which happens Kodesh Kadoshim. And then we have a variety of blood sprinkling. And the halacha is that while this happens, you're not allowed to stand inside the heichal. In fact, sometimes the Kohen Gadol would die, so they would tie a rope to him to be able to pull him out because you weren't allowed to come in. Now, Besides for that, there was another Drabonon de Halacha, not to stand in Ulam Lamizbeach, not to stand between Ulam Lamizbeach. Does anybody know approximately how much space was between Ulam Lamizbeach? 22 amas exactly. It's interesting that there's 22 amas from the beginning of the Azor to the Mizbeach, and there's another 22 amas from the Mizbeach to the Ulam. To the Ulam. Let's go very, very briefly, because if you've got the basics clear, this more not easy. So here's when you did the Keteris on Yom Kippur and the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Here's where you did it during most of the year. There was also Zvikas Adon, which happened sometimes here and sometimes there. Besides for that, we've got the halacha of not going between the Ulam Lamizbeach, that's here. I just mentioned that here's also 22 amas. So this is the apostle who go to Dashting to learn all the halachas of not going there when there's avodah going on. So let's see more insight. Tonu Rabbanim and Gimel on Beis, bottom line. V'chol Adam lo yeh bo'el moed. Nobody should be no moed. We once mentioned the Yerushalmi. V'chol Adam is referring to Malachim. How does the word Adam ever refer to Malachim? If those who are still awake, but after on the first day Shavuos, which we said, it says that a vision that Yechezkel and Navi saw, and there it says they saw Malachim, and some of them had a tsuras Adam. They looked a bit like a person. Okay. So you might have thought, shouldn't be anywhere, even the whole Azor, that's even over here, as a Sisol. Is Ezas Noshim Kud Azor? No, as we said only 100 times, Ezas Noshim is not. Tamud Leima Bo'el Moed. Only no Moed. You're allowed to stand in Azor. Any other Bo'el Moed should be Mitbo. What about Shiur Beis Lomi? Minayin. Tamud Leima B'Kodesh Rud B'Kodesh Spare. In fact, we're going to be dashing this pasuk again and again. So if you get the pasuk in front of you, I'll read out the pasuk once. V'chol Adam lo yeh bo'el moed b'boyo lechape b'Kodesh ad seiso b'chipe b'ade b'ad beiso b'ad kol kaliso. The word b'Kodesh tells us that even in Shiloh and the Beis Hamikdash it was forbidden. So this asks the question why you need an extra pasuk for these cases, and this goes in that there were differences between the Mishkan and Shiloh and the Beis Hamikdash, and therefore not always can you learn halachas from each other. That's referring to the Keteris. How do you know about Matan Domim? And later the Gemara is going to ask, how do you know about the Keteris? The pasuk just says, who told you what the Chape means Keteris? The more understands this Keteris. So how do you know B'Shas Matan Domim? It comes the Chape, the Gemara will explain the Joshua. How do you know even when he's walking out? And finally, we dash in the last few words. The chiper ba'ado ba'ad beis v'ad kol kalisol kaporosa. His kapor kutemes the kaporas beisoy before his family. Kaporas beis kutemes kaporas echad v'akonim before his brothers the konim. The kaporas echad v'akonim kutemes the kapor kol kalisol before the whole of kalisol. And the Vilna Gaon misses out one line because it wasn't full kaporas, not him, his family, the konim and kalisol, because him and his family occurred simultaneously. So the Gaon says, misses out the words. That means first his, then the Kohanim, then Kalisol. But Maisa, him and his family happened at the same time. The question is, so let's go through the pasuk very slowly. Nobody shall be ba'oyal moed. Ba'oyal moed teaches us that only in the moed is forbidden, but in the Azor it is permitted. That's Pasha talking about the Keteris. It won't explain how we know Keteris. Not only for the Keteris, but also for Matan Domim. How do I know? Because it says, B'voyoy lechape. B'voyoy lechape is also Matan Domim. Kodesh teaches what? Shiloh and Beis Hamikdash. Shiloh and Beis Hamikdash known for the Kodesh. Ad Seiso teaches us what? In and out. V'chefer ba'ado ba'ad Beis tells us the order of the kapor. Omama. Eilil b'shas haktor. My mashba. How do you know the pasuk is even talking about the Keteris? Maybe it's talking about everything. Maybe it's talking about Matan Domim. Omar Rov v'chinoma b'tzok ba'avdim v'chinoma b'lozam hakor v'chefer ba'ado ba'ad Beis v'ad kol kal yisor. If you remember, we mentioned a few times that he bought 2 goats and 1 cow. Sorry, he did 2 viduim on the cow, 1 on the goat. Each time he did a video, did a different section. Here, the pasuk is talking about going in and doing something for him, his family, and the whole of Klal Yisrael. Now, when did he ever do simultaneously for 3 different parts of Klal Yisrael? The answer is, it must be Ezu kapor sheshavaloi ulebeiso lech v'akodim b'chol Klal Yisrael. And again, the Gaon miss out the word ulebeiso because him and beiso is the same thing. If you look on the Gaon side of the page, miss out the word beiso. It's referring to the Keteris, and the Keteris is the power which is mechaper on everybody together. The soy we only did video on Klal Yisrael. The Maisi, you're right. Christ was, yeah, but it's okay. But he did do a separate video for his family. Says well, Keteris mechaper. Says the Keteris indeed do a kapor. It's well, and yes, indeed. This is a possible passage. Koyach in 2 weeks what time? What happened was Koyach mocked and there was a Magefa. Means Kaiso started complaining there was Magefa. And as Moshe told Aaron, take the Keteris, vayiten the sectors, vayechaper alom, but told Rabbi Shmuel, Makteris mechaperes aloshon ho. Yova dova shebechashor, something which is silent. V'chapa ma'aseh chashor should atone for something which is silent. Just say a couple of points over here. The Keteris is the chapa because it's something which is silent over something which is silent. The question is, Lashon Hara is not always silent. Sometimes, especially in that story in Korach, they all complained loud. Before Shema asked this question, they say that generally speaking, a person tries to say Lashon Hara in privacy in order that people should know that he's saying Lashon Hara. You try to say it you don't try to publicize that he's speaking Lashon Hara. In what way is the Keteris a silent thing? Before Shem very bothered to say, what is silent about the Keteris? Is it more silent unless they're doing Zvika? What makes more noise, doing the Keteris or Zvika?
Secret.
It doesn't suggest John's.
by himself in the
And when he does the Zvika of the Dam, he's also by himself in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So he says that by the Dam, he would say Achas, Achas, Achas. He would sing to himself the order one up, one down. So what happened was, there was a bit of noise, but about the Dam. But the Keteris, he made no noise at all. That's one explanation. Another explanation, very interesting, he says that the Bechashoy means that the Torah doesn't say explicitly the avoid of the Keteris. The avoid of the Keteris is not as clearly stated in the Torah, it's more hidden. Just another point is like this. So Vashim Pashkech tells us that when Moshe Rabbeinu, it's more actually in Shabbos, when Moshe Rabbeinu got the Luchos, the Malachim argued and they said, we want the Luchos. And what happened was Moshe Rabbeinu had to have an argument with them. Anybody remember the argument? They don't have parents, how can you give it over in? Do you have ever jealousy, etc.? To stop the Malach HaMos. Malach HaMos said, how can you stop me? I'm going to shliach of Hashem, I'm going to shliach of Moshe. Now we just said that what is the Keteris Mechapet for the Abir of Lashon Hara? That means it's very interesting. The Keteris is the one recipe which is guaranteed to stop death, and it's the same recipe which is Mechapet for Lashon Hara, which teaches us that the Ikar Koyach of the Malach HaMos is the Koyach of Lashon Hara. So if you can stop Lashon Hara, you can stop death. That's mamish what's going on over here. Okay, but let's just get clear. The Torah, the Gemara says that the pasuk was actually speaking about Keteris. How do we speak about Keteris? Because it says everybody together, and that happens only by the Keteris, which happens to everybody together. Now, the pasuk also says Bevoyo lechape adds what? Zvika as well. Very good. And therefore, when the Kohen is doing Zvika in Beis Hamikdash, what happens? You're not allowed it. Nobody's allowed it. Right. So now also, we learned there. Now this is, by the way, only a din d'Rabbanan. Until now, we talk about devices. You're not allowed where in the heichal. Midrabbanan, they made a gezeira d'Rabbanan not to allow you where. That's quite a bit further, right? Here is the heichal. There's ulam lamizbeach. So they're forbidding you a whole extra step. Comes along, Omar Balaza, he limits it. When he would do the Aktera in the Heichel, that's the Aktera Mizbeach HaPnimi. That, when they did the Aktera on the Lifnai V'Lifnim, when we do the Aktera Lifnai V'Lifnim? Only on Yom Kippur and only on Kodesh HaKadosh. So that Mehechel Polshi, Polshi were allowed. That means even though the Mishnah doesn't say that, the Mishnah just says that we do our bono not allowed Ben Olam Lamizbeach. Lemaisa, he comes along and he limits it that it's only referring to where it's only referring to the rest of the year. But on Yom Kippur, you're allowed to be there. You're allowed to be there. You're allowed to be there. And the reason is because what happens is we're scared that he'll get drawn in. So when the rest of the year, when he sees it, if he's standing there, he might get drawn in. But on Yom Kippur, he's not going to be drawn in because he can't say anything. He's only in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, therefore not Chodesh. That's what Abba Loza should. Now we're going to ask a question of Elazar from advice. Kedi. Kedi is one of these words which there's many Rishonim discussing. I remember it comes up in the first daf in Bava Metzia, and in the first sugyas we learn. So and everybody gets up. What's Kedi? Some say Kedi means anonymous. Kedi means anonymous. So the Amilan, some say Kedi, meaning an anonymous person, meaning somebody that we do not know his name. And that is how the Aruch explains. Rashi, though, says Kedi is the name of a person. Kedi is the name of a person. So again, let's read it to the side. And some say either Kedi asked the question or somebody asked the question, we do not know who. And there's other explanations, but these are the two main accepted explanations what the word Kedi means. Rabbi Yoma. Just like we separate between Ulam Lamizbeach, which is the Mishnah and Kelim, which you just mentioned, at the time of the Keteris, also at the time of Zrikas Stam. Here he mentions 3 Zrikas Stam. We'll mention briefly because Rashi goes through each one what they are. Parker and Mashiach means that if a person does an Aver by mistake, which is Chayav Chatos, when would you be Chayav Chatos for? Loisa say sheish boy covers we should do b'shugig. Like Toli suggested, doing a chilul Shabbos, let's say lighting a candle on Shabbos, forgetting that it's Shabbos. But what happens if you're the Kohen Gadol and you by mistake light a candle on Shabbos? Then you don't bring a normal chatos, you bring a special cow. And that cow, the zvika is not done on the outside mizbeach like a normal chatos, but it's done inside the Beis Hamikdash. That's power Kohen Mashiach. Even when he's not on duty. Uparam Dovel Shel Tzibur is referring to when most of Klal Yisrael do an Avei, or let's say most of Klal Yisrael light a candle on Shabbos, because they were told by their Sanhedrin that it's okay. So then again, instead of each individual being a chatos, they bring a cow. What? The tzibur. That's Uparam Dovel Shel Tzibur. And finally, Siyah with Gechovim is referring to when most of Klal Yisrael do an Avei, which but the Sanhedrin told them is okay. But it wasn't just a normal chatos, but rather they did an avei of avodah zarah. That means they did an avei of avodah zarah as a lav sheish b'kos. So if let's say by mistake say avodah zarah, you bring a normal chatos. If most of Klal Yisrael do avodah zarah, they bring a cow and a soy. They bring 2 kabonos, and the soy goes inside the Beis Hamikdash. That's the seira which Gechavim is referring to a tzibur, which by mistake, by the decision of Beis Din, did an avei, and then they bring 2 animals: a cow from oil and a soy from tzcham. Okay. So these are all these 3 korbanos. The common denominator is that you do zrika inside, and therefore the Mishnah, the Brisa tells us that you're not allowed Mishnah Ulam Lamizbeach to do the zrika inside. And then the Brisa continues. So if you're going to say to me that you're not allowed to stand in Ulam Lamizbeach and you're not allowed to stand in the Heichal, so the question the Brisa is now struggling to understand is there anything more special about the Heichal than there is between the Ulam Lamizbeach? Is there anything more special? And this obviously asks the question, there's many extra special things there. What? All the kelim with there, Tessa says, Mizbeach is all there, and you have to do the Matzah there. But Tessa says the most question, the brightest question is, in this halacha of not standing there when the Kohen Gadol is doing avodah, is there any difference between Ulam HaMizbeach and Neichel? That's what the Brisa asks. The Bach changes it. Is there any difference? So the Brisa finishes off. There is a difference. What is the difference? And then it's only b'shas haktor. Now, what does the Brisa mean? Here, the Gemara basically is going to change from the Havmanah to Maskana, and that changes the Kasha to the Teretz. In the Havmanah, the Gemara understands Haktorah means when you do the Keteris. Sheloi b'shas Haktorah means when you do Zrikas Dam. And therefore, it says that in the Eichel, you always have to be purged whether it's Haktorah or Zrikas Dam. But on the Mizbeach, it's only b'shas Haktorah. And the Gemara explains. Here, let's see inside. My love b'shas Haktorah. It says, sorry, b'shas Haktorah mi aposh. B'shas Haktorah, even you have to separate one on Mizbeach. My love b'shas Haktorah d'lifnai v'lifnim. Is it not referring to that's going on in the Kodesh HaKadoshim? Look, it says, well, b'shas Haktorah de Heichel. We're talking about in the Heichel. And the Heichel, when you do Haktorah in the Heichel, then you have to separate ben olam lamizbeach. Is that the only difference? Because the Gemara understood the Brisa is saying that ben olam lamizbeach you have to separate only b'shas Haktorah, meaning at this stage only b'shas Haktorah of the Heichel and not lifnai v'lifnim. And at the same time, Shaloi b'shas haktorah. What Shaloi b'shas haktorah mean? Zvika. Very good. According to this Havam, the Shaloi b'shas haktorah means zvika, which means that when you do zvika in the heichol, you do not need to separate ben olam mizbeach. If that's the case, you've got a huge difference between olam mizbeach. What's the maila? Dilu meichol posh b'shas haktorah today, b'shas haktorah lifnei v'lifnim. Let me exact this. According to this logic of Rabbi Elazar, there are two fundamental differences between the Ulam and Mizbeach. That's the area between the Mizbeach and the Ulam, and the Heichel. One, when you do Ketuvos in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, you do not need to separate the Ulam and Mizbeach. You do need to separate from the Heichel. That's one difference. Difference number two is that when you do Matan Domim in the Heichel, you only need to separate from the Heichel, but not with Ulam Mizbeach, because the Gemara understood the words of the Beis of B'shas Haktorah is referring to Ketuvos, and Shaloi b'shas Haktorah is referring to Matan Domim, and it says you don't need to separate. So why did the Beis say what is the difference? And only tell us one difference when there's really two. Now what the Gemara does is that the Gemara changes the words of the Beis. This is all Rashi, and the Gemara says Haktorah means Haktorah of Ketuvos. Shaloi b'shas haktorah means not haktorahs of the heichel, the haktorahs of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Changes it completely. B'shas haktorah means the shas haktorah of the haktorahs on the heichel. Shaloi b'shas haktorah does not mean matan domim. It means shaloi b'shas haktorah, but rather when you're in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. As God says, hakatoni. This is what the Beis is saying. Elo shebeheichel, when it's in the heichel, poshim b'shas haktorah. Whether you do the Haktorah of the Ketuvos in the Eichel or the Kodesh HaKadoshim, in Persian, top of Memdala Domut Beis, only B'shas Haktorah of the Eichel. There's another difference. What is the other difference? From the Eichel Posh B'Mekdusha today, B'Mekdusha Lifnei v'Lifnim. The Heichel you separate whether you do Zvika inside or you do Zvika in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Only when you do Zvika Sadam in the Heichel. It is all one halacha, and therefore it does not need to explain it. So the Gemara is sticky by Rabbi Elazar, and the Gemara says Lemaskana as follows: the halacha is when you do the Ketuvos in the Kodesh HaKadoshim or the Zvika Sadam in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, you only have to separate from the Heichel and not with the Olam Mizbeach. When you do Ketuvos in the Eichel, or you do Zikas Adam in the Eichel, then you have to separate between the Ulam Lamizbeach as well. Why does the Beis not say there's two differences? One is the Ketuvos in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, one's the Matan Domim in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. The answer is because it's the same idea, it's the same Yesod. And since it's the same Yesod, therefore we do not need to separate. It's Shem Fisha Achasi. And when the Beis says B'shas Haktorah and Shaloi b'shas Haktorah, it doesn't mean B'shas Haktorah is Ketuvos, B'shas Haktorah is Dam. B'shas Haktorah means B'shas Haktorah of the Heichel. Shaloi b'shas Haktorah means B'kodesh HaKadoshim. Omama, kach posh b'shas matan pa'akim Mashiach ba'avdov shel Sibur v'sevetz t'chavim minolam. How do we know? The Torah doesn't mention it. We just had one pasuk. But more answers. In that pasuk which we dash again and again, it says the word lechaper. And therefore, since by these kabbonos it also says kapora, therefore we do a gzera shava that just like not allowed to be neichel b'shas ketuvos, not allowed to be neichel b'shas matan dam. Omar acher ba'ava shma mina. We prove from here. There's a Mishnah in Kelim, and I once mentioned this Mishnah in the Rambam. What does the Rambam write before the first perek of Kelim? It says, don't learn it once, don't learn it twice, don't learn it 1,000 times. Even 1,000 times is not enough. The first perek of Kelim. How many times should you learn it? Until you know it in every possible way. And it's a very beautiful perek. Once summer holidays, every summer holidays, I try and find a topic for them with the children. I attempted it. It wasn't a successful limud. I didn't take enough commentaries with me, and I couldn't work out all the Mishnahs. Some Mishnahs are quite hard. The one of the Mishnahs says, Esa Kedushas. There are 10 levels of Kedusha. The first level of Kedusha is Eretz Yisrael. It's more Kaddish in other countries. Can you tell me an example in what way is more Kaddish? We did have it once in. You can't only bring Bikurim from there, or for example, we had it earlier, like Yoma, we had it Mishnah and Gemara and Pesachim. Okay. Then you've got a walled city is more Kaddish than the rest of Eretz Yisrael. What way is it more Kaddish? What? walled city Megillah, it's not more Kaddish, it's a din Megillah.
Yeah.
And Mitzvah is not allowed in a walled city. Then you've got Yerushalayim is more Kaddish. Yerushalayim, you're allowed to eat Ma'aseh Sheni. Then you've got the Har Beis is more Kaddish. What's more Kaddish about the Har Beis? Which Tamah? A Zov or a Zov. Very good. Okay. Then you've got the Chil. The Chil was a special din, which Lamai says, no, how many have we got to? I can't remember. No, not so. Only 5, I think. The Chil is the 5th. Is what? What's special about the Chil? Anybody remember? Goyim are not allowed further. It's actually Pasha says, and what did they want them to do? They destroyed it. They were so upset, and so forth it goes through. And one of them it says is that the Ulam LaMizbeach is more Kaddish than the area of before the Mizbeach. That means we all know Ezra Sisol is one of them. For example, what's the difference between Ezra Sisol and Ezra Kohanim? Is that Ezra Sisol is allowed to come to, Ezra Kohanim he is not allowed to go to, except if he's needed to do smicha, etc. Again, each one's got a sefer kedusha. So now over here you've got Ezra Kohanim, you've got the area next to the Mizbeach, you've got the area after the Mizbeach. In that Mishnah in Kelim, it says that you should know. Rashi brings some of the Mishnah in Kelim. If you look in Rashi, let's see the Rashi inside. We've got a minute or two. Malas Devaisa. Let's just see the Rashi. It's 2 lines. Mishnah says Kelim per Kamo. Har Beis b'Kodesh b'Yerushalayim v'Achil ma'Har Beis v'Zas Noshim v'Achil. I didn't say so much. V'Zas Som v'Shal Noshim v'Shal Kadim v'Shal Yisroel. U'B'Ne'olam LaMizbeach Mina'azor v'Heichom No'olam LaMizbeach. That means the Mishnah Rashi doesn't tell us all the details. The Mishnah there does, but it tells us some of the things. So, for example, there's a more kedusha after the Mizbeach. B'Ne'olam LaMizbeach is more Kodesh than before. Now the question is that din a devaisa din or d'Rabbanan din? Comes along of Achabad, some people go to Adabab and says it's a devaisa din. The kedusha b'Ne'olam LaMizbeach be more Kodesh than adjacent to the Mizbeach is not midrabbanan but min haTorah, and he's going to prove it. What's the proof? Let's see it inside. These malas all devaisa. And they learned it halach mishmisi because there's no psukim. I just, by the way, it's very interesting. I happen to note see that the Rambam brings down this Mishnah and he says it's all d'Rabbanan. These matters are d'Rabbanan. And in fact, I mentioned to you very, by the way, that the chil that go is not allowed is not really, that is definitely d'Rabbanan. It's a bit of a kash. And the Tisyantiv asks on the Rambam, where did he get it from? I was very surprised. It doesn't mention this Gemara. I was thinking the only reason is perhaps it doesn't mention this Gemara because Gemara is doicherit. But if it would be my Mishnah, it wasn't my Mishnah, I was looking here. I'd write it. I don't know why the Tisyantiv didn't mention this Gemara over here. It must be because the Gemara is doicherit. So okay. Let's say again. All these 10 kedushas are bidat. Why? Why did they say don't stand there? Because you might come in. We should say don't go anywhere. That means, why did they say only don't stand? Why didn't they say the whole Azor? Says of Achabav, I'll explain to you the logic. Because there's a different level of kedusha. Since it's a different level of kedusha, so therefore they realize that if we forbid this, it's not necessary to forbid the rest. If the entire Azor is an equal level of kedusha, there's no logical reason to say don't stand there but stand there. There's no level of difference of kedusha. The answer must be that min haTorah there's a different levels of kedusha, and therefore they said that even though you're allowed to min haTorah, that means min haTorah when you're not allowed to stand when you're doing this week min haTorah, only neichel. They added midrabbanan one further step. Why didn't they add the entire Azor? The answer is because they wanted to add one further level of the Torah step. The Torah said the Mizbeach is the next level of kedusha, so they added that one. But if you hold the next Torah level step is what? The entire Azor, then it won't make any logic that the Chachamim should then split the Azor in half and say only half. Says the Gemara, no, we don't agree with you. No way at all. Says the Gemara, Kimudulu Mafsik, Ben Olam Lamizbeach, Kimudulu Mafsik, Midi Leminko Milsa. Azor, Kimudik, Mizbeach, Chitzid, Mafsik, Minko Milsa. Really, I could say to you that it's all one level of Kedusha. There's no difference whatsoever. Only when you're standing in Olam Lamizbeach, you've got no barrier. Masha'enke, when you're standing behind the Mizbeach, you've got a barrier. It's not all the way, but the Mizbeach did take up a very big part. So therefore, when you're standing on the Mizbeach, we're scared you might come in. But if you're standing before the Mizbeach, you may not come in. And therefore, you've got no proof to Rachabad, and we push it away. Now, till now, we'll be discussing 2 places, the Heichal and Bolam Mizbeach. And what's a very difficult issue is, there's another thing, a huge building in between. What's that called? The Olam. The Olam was, in English, called an ant chamber. It was a huge building. It was 100 amas long this way, and what? 40 amas high? No, I think it was higher than 40 amas high. If I remember correctly, it was 100 amas high.
Wasn't it?
What?
Was inside it?
Oh, so we'll see. It's like a hallway before you go into a thing. Now, the Torah only said, don't stand in Eichel. Chazal forbade you here. The question is, what happened here? That means like this. There's two ways to understand. The most suggests two ways. Well, one way to understand is what? Oh, okay. So let's see inside, and we'll see what the Gemara says. Omar Rava says like Toli Shema Mino Kedushas Ulam Veichel Chodem Asi. It's all one thing. If it's really two separate things, Ulam Gufei Gezeyo. If you say the Ulam is not really the same as the Eichel, that's only the Rabbanon to get Gezeyo. V'neikum Gezeyo Nigzel Gezeyo. Should we make a Gezeyo? Doesn't make any sense. So well, no. Loi Ulam Ubein Ulam LaMizbeach Chod Kedusha. Heichel Ulam Shtei Kedusha. It's got no proof. Could be the Heichel is one Kedusha, and the Ulam and Ulam LaMizbeach has the same Kedusha. So therefore, Minat Teva is only also from the Heichel, and over here it's with Rabbanon. So the question is all of this Deraisa, and from here Rabbanon, which no one's left Rabbanon, or is there Heichel Deraisa, and then or is maybe that's the Heichel Deraisa and Ulam and Mizbeach is all of that's Rabbanon, or maybe the Ulam and the Heichel is Deraisa, and the Ulam and Mizbeach is Rabbanon, and it's a question which is not. It is.
If the Olam's part of the Mizbeach, then you don't need to go to.
Sorry, it isn't. Sorry, it's not. Sorry, what did you say?
If the Olam is like the Mizbeach, then
Wait, the Olam Mizbeach.
Yeah, then they don't need to go all the way to the Mizbeach because they've got a physical line of the Olam itself.
That's a very nice question. I like the question. You hear the question? If you say that, what? No, wait a second. What would the question be? If the Olam is the same level as Olam Mizbeach, so they should have just made but the answer is because it's the same kedusha. Once they made according to the answer, but the reason they made the difference was only because of the barrier. You have the barrier of the ulam. Once you have the barrier of the ulam, so if you say it's all one kedusha, they could have just forbidden the ulam. And what are you going to say, people? You won't need the gzeir. That's a very good question.
That's only according to Mandala. It's two separate things.
What? That's only because about Doha. Yes, I don't know. Okay, I don't. That will come into a slightly lighter thing. Okay, let's get to everything. Let's try and get to a thing. It's very, very easy Gemara. It's very, very simple Gemara. It's Gemara is like this. Every day. So every day, what would they do? They would take a silver shovel and pour it into a gold shovel. Today, they used to use a gold. But by time, why do we always use silver? Like we said already in the Mishnah, we don't want to use gold to take the gold into the coals out in this Mizbeach. Why? Or ruin it, and it's expensive to replace gold. Why today would you use only gold? It's an effort to pull from one to the other. To save the effort, we use gold the whole time. Kav Gechalin, the Kav of Gechalin would scatter. If you remember the Mishnah, we had two opinions. Whether you would take from 6, that's a Beis, or with 4. And they both agree that you pour it into how many Kav? 3. They both agree you pour it into 3. Says the Beis that one Kav would scatter and would fall on the floor. Could you leave it on the floor? Moshe, could you leave it on the floor?
No.
Why not? Oh, Tolly is ready to tell you because not covered, but there's a much more practical reason. Being a Kohen, you should think about it. They walk barefoot, and you're going to leave hot coals on the floor, people are going to get burnt. So what should you do? You'd sweep them into a stream. There was a stream of water, a canal going through the Beis Mikdash. You'd sweep it into the stream. The Tosfos later on Daf Mem with Beis and the Tosfos Shalom over here get very disturbed for two separate halachic reasons. One, there's a tremendous issa of putting out a fire on Mizbeach, right? It's an issa device, the Malchus, right? Oh, the question is, we will see that there are many who will hold that even if it's not on the Mizbeach, it's still lost. So that's what is access on Mem Vav Beis. That's one question. There's some answer that what you would do is you'd wait for it that the fire should go out and then you would sweep it. With hot but not fire. The Shalom says that. There's not lively answers that.
If the floors are marble, right?
Yes.
That should not cool it down.
Yeah, but was it out? Was the fire out or not? And another question is that it's got kedusha. It's got kedusha. It's been in a keli. since it's been in a keli of klishos, it is Kaddish. Once it's being Kaddish, you can't sweep it away. You have to use it for a Kaddish thing. And here we have two different answers in the Rishonim. To Shon mentions both on this page. One, that the silver one was never Kaddish and therefore never will become Kaddish, or that a klishos is only Mekadosh if you want it to be Mekadosh, and you had that it shouldn't be Mekadosh. But it's not going to be no klishos the Gabbai making the things inside the Kaddish. The Shonim asks though that there are those who hold that klishos is Mekadosh even if you don't want it to be Mekadosh. So he says according to that opinion, you've only got the answer that they will not Mekadosh the silver one.
So none of the called be Kaddish?
None of the called be Kaddish. It seems so. None of those would have the din of Kaddish. So what do you say?
Even the ones that ended up getting used into the next.
No, because the next one was Kaddish. Sorry, the next one was Kaddish. That's right. Only once, and that's right. Good point pointing out. Like this, but the next Keli was Kaddish. He says it. The next Keli was Kaddish. Oh. The golden was Kaddish. In my Gemara, it's printed on Daf Memud Aleph. Okay, let's go back. I don't have so much time. Okay. Tomechad cab. One Beis says that one cab got spilled. Does that make sense? Yes, because the Mishnah says start off at 4 and went into 3. But Tanidach Kabaim, 2 cab got spilled. So I said, I don't understand. Mishnah machte Tani cab. Tani Kabaim, 2 money. Lu Abodon, because the Kunta Chamim, how much got spilled? 1. But Lu Abusi, not Abusi, how much Kunta Abusi got spilled? 3. The He started off with 4. And you went in with 2. 4 like the Chachamim. You went in with 2, not with 3. In the time of the Beis Hamikdash, they changed a couple of times the measurements, and the Mitbori one became. They increased it to the Yerushalmi one. So really, it was actually 5 of the Mitbori, and it became 6 of the Yerushalmis. So we would use the kav. When we say so, we don't mean 6 of the Yerushalmi, we only mean 5, and therefore only 2 actually got spilled. And therefore, it's interesting that they used the Lashon, which is confusing, but they used one which was actually 5, and then it turned into 3. The Cholim day was heavy, today it was light. How would you make it heavy? It was thick metal. Today was thin. Every day it was short. That day the handle was very long. My tama. The elbow should help him. When you've got a very, very long handle, it's much easier to hold it. Every day it did not have a bell. He says it had a bell. Why did it have a bell? The halach is that the pasuk says that you should hear him when he comes to the kodesh. Normally, how would you hear Kohen Gadol moving? The me'il. But the problem was when you in Kippur, they didn't wear me'il. They only wore white clothes, and therefore they made a bell on the fire pot in order that you should hear him coming in. That is Rashi's explanation. Here's a picture. I'm surprised. I was so bothered that already making a picture. To me, that doesn't look like a major bell.
Yeah. If it's on that thing, it's going to be on his armpit. You won't be able to hear it.
That says it knocks. It knocks. Imagine it knocks. I don't.
If you see this on his armpit, it won't be anyway.
No, because it passed his armpits.
So they get rid of them, or so they should go out, just so they should know.
They should know that's coming in for the Malachim to know, for others to know. It was a special din that Yishmael couldn't be Tosis Shali brings many other explanations that disagree with Rashi. One explanation he says is that it had a leather cover over. A metal cover, we'll come to the other one, a metal cover over the lid. Can you see a metal cover? And he says a few explanations why it had a metal cover. Niashtik means a metal cover. Why would it have a metal cover? He gives a few explanations. One explanation is because it would stay there for a long time, much longer than normal. Normally, they take the toast, go in, put it to do the whole thing. Here, it would wait and do other things in between. So it'd be very, very hot. And it'd be very hot, you wanted not to burn the Kohen Gadol. Alternatively, he says, on a normal day, you only carried 1 fire pot. And therefore, you could cover your face to protect it from heat. On Yom Kippur, he would carry 2. And therefore, he had no way to protect his face, so he had a metal cover. That's one explanation. Another explanation of Tisha is that it had a leather cover on the handle. Over here, a leather cover. Not brilliant pictures, I must admit, the leather cover on the handles. The reason is because it would get very hot. And again, he says for the same reasons, for a long time, you'd have to walk quite far to the Kedoshim. So they have a leather handle on it. Now, Let's just see. Tosis mentions a couple. Let me just want to show one that could have Tosis has published in spoil from the Shmuel Vosna. Let's just see. Have you got Tosis B'cholim in Nashtik Pirush Rashi? Have you got it? It's the third fourth of Tosis. It's the first of the middle size by me. Pirush Rashi Tabas Hashvi Akuk Dichsidish Vakuk V'La Kodesh. V'Shav Gosin Nautik Shel Yichavish Kabut. V'Nenu Viken Rivok and Nautik Shel Oyo Yosi Saviv Yoto Shel Machta Lechus Shel Yichve Shel Chol Kili Matris Chamik Tzos Cham Kule. Metal heat is a very good conductor of heat. If you say Chayim Nautik Yisrael Shayom, if you show Yecholim Shoyim Machtas Mamuba was there for a long time. Actually, say Chama Harbe. Later you would take it out of the Kodesh HaKadoshim and you would leave it there for a long time. Now, metal conducts heat very well. Can you imagine if it's been there for a long time, how hot the metal power would be? The halacha is you're not allowed to have chatzitza. Do you remember once there was a Kohen Gadol that used to use a glove when he did shechita and he lost both hands? So there's a chatzitza on the leather glove. You bang in the leather cover with nails. And you bang it with nails, it becomes part of it. So Shul Vazda, so Shul from Shul Vazda regarding these metal kettles, which are covered with plastic outer cover. And the question is, what to do about it? Is a bottle to it or not? And what he does is, I'm not talking about the halacha of kettles or not. How you do, well, some people unscrew it, and some people back it to go, whatever you do. But he mentions this tosis in the middle of the tshuva, and he says that you see that it's not a chatzitza. Why is it not a chatzitza? Because you see tosis that if you bang the leather cover into the metal, I was like, unbelievable tshuva. But I just have to know from the tzushta, from the comparison. Okay, I just want to do a tiny bit more. Oh, nice light, Gemara, and everybody can go home and do some research about this. Every day would have yellow gold, the day would have red gold. There's 7 kinds of gold. Anybody work in jewelry here? If you work in jewelry, there's 7 kinds of gold. Zov, Tov, the Zov, plain gold, the Zov Tov and good gold, the Zov Oife, gold that comes from the country of Oife, the Zov Mufaz and shiny gold, the Zov Shochot, the word explained in the second one that is, the Zov Sogo, the word was the Zov Parv, and the more explains. The gold in that land was good, which means that other gold is not so good. Zav Oifid, Osm Oifid comes from the country of Oifid. Zam Mufaz, top of Memhei Amud Aleph, Shadim in a pause. It was so shiny, it was like a diamond. That's top of Memhei Amud Aleph. Like a Nechbod Zav, and we pause Vav, pause is like diamonds. Some gold is as shiny as diamond. Zav Shachut, Shenit Vekachut, it's so soft, you can actually use it as a thread. If you ever buy a gold, you can use it as a thread. That's a Zav Shachut. Zav Sogu, the Shor Sheniftach. When somebody starts selling it, everybody else closes shop because it's so high in demand. It's the best gold. Nobody would. Zarparvim, sorry, this is the best. Zarparvim is the best of the best. It looked like red, like the plot of a cow. Yoma Chamishen is only actually 5. Each one of these 5 has 2 categories. Zov is Zov Tov. That day was red. That is Zarparvim. Was red like the blood of cows. So mind them, they did the avodah with red cows. The Maisi should know. The Mashal goes into great detail, episodis, why Akshboch created 7 different kinds of gold. And we should know that obviously there's reasons for it. Nothing is by chance. There's 7 kinds of gold. You should all be zeichet to all 7. Adorn yourself for all 7. Okay. So we're up to Nam and here with left about 6 lines from the top. Well, you've got 7 kinds of gold.
All the way back.
Well, what happened? Or where was he actually off to? You also have, so rush. I started off the Shiur talking about the rights of the David Babti B'Moshe because no Musad of the greatest of the Yid, rushing from it. What? Your brother-in-law, he said, you've got family here by the by no, he's got. What? That's very good. Yeah, very. one day.